You're listening to Sorry for Asking.
Sorry for asking. I'm Cole Connor.
And I'm Adam Ramzi. This is where we talk shop, ask questions,
Tell stories and laugh some laughs about being creators.
as well as consumers of adult content we love watching too.
We certainly do. We also discuss the impact adult films have had on us
On our guests.
and on the LGBTQ community.
So strap on and strap in.
And here we go. Hello. Welcome back to Sorry for Asking. I'm Cole Connor.
And I'm Adam Ramzi.
Hi, Adam.
Hi, Cole. It's been so long.
I know.
My goodness.
Jeez.
Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. This is our third episode of season 4. Sorry for asking. And we had such a good time with the guest last time. We decided to throw someone else in the mix who we like very much. The very sexy and, as I call him, a multi-hyphenate, Mr. Logan Stevens. Hey. Bring that mic a little closer to that pretty face.
How you doing, Logan?
I'm good. It's wet outside.
It is wet outside.
is.
Yeah, this random little rainy spring day, or almost spring,
Aren't
I
we
guess.
supposed to have rain in spring though, and then we just didn't get it?
Yes, I think that's an accurate description. Yeah.
Instead, we had like a second fire season.
Ugh.
Yeah, a winter fire season.
fire.
How fun that was. But you survived. We survived. And you have been spending a lot of time in Big Bear lately. Is that correct?
Not like during the winter, cause like my place rents out there
Okay.
during the winter.
Y'all, he's a
So-
property owner now. Really graduated.
Yeah, I know. I have more to say about that in a bit.
Anytime. We've got about 45 minutes to fill.
When did you get your place up there?
I bought it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's coming up in 2 years.
And you spend most of the summer.
I mean, yeah, I prefer being up
Yeah.
there. I think I'm kind of like I'm done with my city era.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was never a city person, but that's just where you go if you're a homosexual. So
Right.
Yeah, we met in 2010, I want to say, during your New York Queerdo era. How long were you living in New York?
I don't actually know, because if I go back and I try and create like a chronology of like dates and stuff like that, I always feel like I'm making mistakes. And I didn't keep, like, if I were to go and do like Instagram digital archaeology, or not Instagram, but like Facebook digital archaeology, like I could figure it out and like,
Sure, yeah.
carbon date some photos and
That's
things. but-
that's not far off from what I did to research before this interview.
Oh yeah, great.
Do you
Facebook archaeology.
Do you
that's the
find
one.
you've always like moved around a lot, or
I like a bold move, and I like trying things out and stuff, and as a person who doesn't have kids and stuff, I'm kind of my only priority. So I go and I do what I think is going to be fun.
Yeah.
yeah?
Nice. I want to. I have a few photos to share. This is the one of me and Logan in our first scene together. Yeah,
yeah.
Look at that. Logan and I think in 2014, working with Raging Stallion. Steve Cruz was our director. And I was so excited to work with you because, we had this,
friendship,
sometimes
yeah.
friendship, even across the country. We would see each other in a place that we frequented once a year. And I was just very fascinated by your life as somebody who's like a multi-creative person. But I also remember feeling at that time that your time as Logan Stevens was coming to an end.
Yeah, I really thought that at that time.
And then now you are, like, in my opinion, a gay adult industry juggernaut. Did you at all see this coming?
Not really. I didn't see any of it coming. But like when we all went to school, or if you did or didn't go to school, we were kind of given this narrative that education was going to be the most valuable thing,
Yeah.
and that it was going to lead to these jobs and stuff. And then you get out of school, and I'd be like, okay, I've got my brain, let's go. And then they're like, okay, well, we can offer you an internship, or we can offer you this. And I was like, well, I thought my brain was supposed to be valuable. And they're like, well, maybe someday.
But
And then so you're like, well, what the fuck do I do? So then and then I discovered I had a body, and they're like, oh, well, right this way, sir. Like, why didn't you say so?
Right. When did I want to get into like your original history too, but just to kind of start off this conversation, I'm curious when your journey as Logan Stevens started.
It started when I moved to New York.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had like these little sort of like kind of novelty jobs in international development as like a recent college graduate.
Is that what you studied?
No, I studied anthropology, but
Okay.
they're kind of like related and stuff. And so it was like these little nonprofit organizations that I worked for, and I just lost a job in Kenya. And I was really trying to get another job out there, and nothing was happening. And this was like, 2000, I guess it was 2009. So it was the beginning of that next recession or whatever. And I was there in Kenya and being like, I'm young and gay, and I have access by birth to the United States and all of these places where I can go be like a young, happy gay. Why am I living in Africa? Why am I living in Kenya? And so I wanted to have that experience. I wanted to go like sow my oats or whatever. So I kind of like thought about what my options would be in the U.S. and I kind of landed on the idea of New York. It sounded the most dramatic and the most fun, and so I got there and I didn't know what to do. I tried to get work. There wasn't any work
In that field, you mean?
just
Or
in,
any
like,
work?
anything.
Okay.
Literally anything that wasn't waiting, because I have a tendency to get fired very quickly from things like that. So
Yeah.
I waited tables briefly for several tries, and it was not.
I can't imagine that would have gone well for you.
No.
You're like, fuck this shit.
No, I have a low tolerance for discomfort, and I have no filter.
So you started in 2009, like,
I think it was pretty much like right off the bat. I landed in New York and I like didn't know what to do, and then I was like, somebody had offered me to stay in their place for free, like they had an extra room, and he happened to be like a photo editor or maybe a video editor or something for Lucas and some other sites or something, and he was like, well, you should probably consider doing this. And I thought, oh, that's terrifying. Maybe I should try it.
Yeah. So you started in video work with studios before or after you kind of dabbled, if you don't mind me talking about, like private work, like private intimate work?
I can't remember which came first.
Okay.
Honestly,
I
I think
think
they just happened at the same time.
I don't know if you remember this, but
boy.
when you were in LA, and it was before I did anything, I was a personal trainer, and we were like a grinder hookup.
Yeah, you came over.
I came
once,
over, and it was like just when the Blue Page was starting to gain some traction.
Okay.
It was definitely the very, very early.
Yeah, you
days.
hadn't done it yet because you were like,
Yeah.
I think I saw some photo. We started talking about like some photos some of your photography that I saw around your apartment, and you were like, yeah, no, he's like, I used to do porn, and I think he's like, maybe I should start one of those spicy pages. And I was like, well, I mean, like you're definitely equipped for it.
Whatever do you mean, Cole?
I don't want to be crass.
I mean,
but
so do we have you to thank for the rebirth of Logan Stevens?
no, it was already on his time.
It's actually Full-Time Poppy was the one.
Really?
Full-Time Poppy was the one that tipped the scales.
Is that Diego?
Yeah, Diego.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he was my neighbor, and we hooked up a couple times. And one time he was like, "Oh, can we do a video?" And I was like, "Well, all my shit's already out there, so sure, why not?" And then he was like, "You should really do this." And I was like, "No, I think I'm done with that."
What year was that? Do you remember?
This would have been 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I had just moved to West Hollywood from that sort of like Silver Lake-ish place that I had.
Oh, yes. Okay. I feel like it was 2014 we filmed that scene with Raging Stallion, And I remember having this very thoughtful conversation with you where I kind of was like, I had only been doing this for about a year and I had never done sex work. Mm-hmm. And I think, you were kind of, I was looking to you for a little bit of guidance because I was very, very careful then and still kind of am now to make sure that sex never felt like work.
Right. Super important.
Yeah. You were very much like an advocate for that way of thinking. Mm-hmm. When did you stop doing that stuff, and what did you do in the interim? Like,
oh, you mean like when I had my porn hiatus?
Yes,
or whatever?
Yeah. Like, how long did that last, and what did it look like?
I guess it lasted maybe like 4 or 5 years, and there was overlap with this other brief career that I had as a costume designer in Hollywood, working for like TV shows and commercials and things. That career was really picking up a lot of steam, and I was quite good at it. So I wanted to put a lot of like energy and time towards that because I thought that was like at the time I thought it was a more sustainable thing than doing any kind of like sex work and stuff. So I put all my effort into that, and then quickly realized I was going to burn out way faster on that than anything else.
Is that what happened? It felt a little bit like you were burning out.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely insane the sort of demands that get placed on you in the world of like television production and stuff. The demands are really high. Like there were certain projects where I would get a job and I would have basically 72 hours to create like a 6-foot mustache dress, and I would have to source the materials. I would have to do all this stuff. And, I would spend a day sourcing the materials, and then I would pull together the team that was necessary to create the thing. And then I would have, less than a day and a half to actually do all the construction and that sort of a thing. And I would work for 30 hours straight, and then I would get 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and then I'd have to be at a fitting at a celebrity's house for like a couple hours. And then I would get a few more hours sleep, and then I would have to be on set for 14 hours.
Who was that mustache dress for?
That it was worn by Anna Faris for one of those like, hey, come visit California commercials where all the celebrities finish their sentences.
Yes, right.
I keep referencing that one because that was probably one of the most dramatic jobs that I ever had.
Yeah.
And it got me a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Because it was quite a construction feat. Like that was.
Yeah.
It was probably like 36 cans of Aquanet and like multiple layers of like.
Wow.
If I had like a construction absolute triumph, it was that.
Yeah. How did they even find you? Like I'm always
just always word of mouth.
Okay.
And like, TV kind of works. There's like production families that people always work with the same people and stuff like that because they're comfortable with each other and they have like an established working relationship. And so, I would sort of get shared between different production families that had relationships with each other. Mm-hmm. Passed around costume construction.
This may have been more of a passion project of yours, but I was really, really excited for the time being. I don't know if this is something you love doing, but can you throw up some of those slam and scram photos? This was like an era of yours. Like these were so much fun. Like for those of you listening, Logan was designing for this clothing line that he had created with a friend of ours named James Cerny. Mm-hmm. Who I guess people know now as another name, but anyway.
Yeah,
but look at these.
Skip Ransom.
Skip Ransom. Yeah. Sorry. Oh. But like these I feel like every drag race girl would like kill for work like this. What was it like creating this, and do you miss it at all?
No, I don't miss it at all. Not in the least bit. If I never sat down at a sewing machine again, I would I'm perfectly happy. Yeah, it was fun. This was because when I first moved to New York, I met all of these like young.
Hey, that's me.
Yeah, right. I met all of these young like queers that were doing, going to really cool parties and wearing really cool things. And I came from the Midwest and I had never seen like anything besides like the t-shirt and jeans combo and stuff. So this was just like absolutely blowing my mind.
Yeah.
And everybody was making their own clothes and stuff. And I found that really inspiring. So I got myself well, there's a lot more to this story, but that's just too many chapters. I got myself a sewing machine and started making things, and they were really terrible, but I was brave enough to wear them out regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like slowly got better and better and better. And I think the thing that was really exciting for me about it was like learning a new skill. And then so once it became a job and a career and all that kind of stuff, and once you know I was getting jobs and it no longer felt like I was discovering something in the process, it just became work, and it was all about like, how much time do I have to do this and how much am I getting paid? And like, does this feel worth whatever sacrifice I have to make to do it? And it ultimately was not. Yeah. And like my mental health was suffering. I was definitely developing like a unhealthy habit with like cocaine and alcohol and stuff. And so I kind of took a look around at my colleagues that were like further along in their career than I was, and the forecast was grim. like people were, it wasn't like people were getting that much better jobs than the ones that I were getting. They were just getting more of it. And I didn't want to sort of like sell my entire life to work.
When you say the forecast was grim, do you mean in terms of having a future in this?
Nobody was happy.
Oh.
Like I want to look around and I want to see the people who are farther along in their career being like happy and having a life that I wanted, and I didn't want any of their lives.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So then when you decided to stop that, is that when Logan Stevens kind of had his comeback?
Almost. No, at that point, I had a friend who had just gotten trained as a massage therapist, and I knew if I just added in like a hand job to that, I could make twice as much. So, so I got that friend to train me how to do massages. Then I hired a few other friends who knew how to do it to train me, you know, to like give me a massage and give me a lesson and stuff. And then so from this combination of like different people, then I kind of put together my own routine based off of the things that I thought were the things that I liked the best. And then I started doing like massages for a number of years. And that was just kind of like a placeholder until I could figure out what I felt inspired to do.
You do have very strong hands, I will say, from experience.
Yeah, and then OnlyFans came along, and I didn't expect that at all. Wait, I'm not supposed to say that. You're saying blue.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess we'll see.
I don't know. We've said it before, but I don't know.
You just say the fan sites.
Yeah,
the fan sites
came along. And kind of changed everything.
Sorry, YouTube, don't cut us out. We only just mentioned it. We're not promoting it. Cool. Well, that's and then like you just kind of like, was it a quick rise in like the response you got?
When the pandemic hit, that's when everything exploded.
Of course.
And I feel very lucky to have been like in this sort of unique position to have been one of the few people that was already doing it and primed for the explosion. So I just kind of rode the wave up, you know?
I always feel like because I started like kind of as the pandemic was calming down, and so like, and then I started doing studio work, and I feel like the people that had done studio work before, like, saw a rise and stayed there, where I think some people that started after the pandemic see a rise and a quick drop.
Yeah, that was a little bit what mine was like. I mean, I've just been doing that for so long, and like, you know, my relationship with adult work has always been kind of tenuous. But I started doing the blue site. I want to say in like 2017. Oh, okay. And it was fun. It was fun to be like, oh, this extra cash, how nice! It's paying my rent.
It was the Wild West back then. We could do anything.
We could do anything. It was so cool. I had all kinds of stuff. Didn't tag people. It was, you know, outside, inside. But then. And then the whole pandemic thing, you know, we call a lot of people pandemic porn stars because like that's like a lot of times where their careers started.
Well, this is this moment where the world really taught us what they actually. Well, I mean, I think the world has been teaching me my whole life what they actually value. There's what the world says that they value, and then there's what the world actually values. 100%. And I've learned to just follow what the world actually values because it's I'm not going to say it's an easier route because we can talk about all of the ways that the world likes to make that path very difficult, but
especially for us.
Yeah, especially for us, for sure.
As people in this industry.
From, you know, community stigma to censorship to like you name it. I call it a fugitive industry because you're always getting chased around the internet and having to hide in corners to try and make this stuff work. Because there's an ever-changing landscape of like little tiny legislations that don't trigger any public interest whatsoever, but have a huge impact on how our business works and our ability to promote what we do.
Yeah.
Tiny little laws that nobody would ever notice,
Yes.
except for like a few niche people out there, protesting and sending letters to a congressperson and who never get read. And
Right.
yeah, it's really kind of. It's intense.
And the odds are stacked against us. I mean, for our listeners, you probably don't know, and we've mentioned in the past before, but like they change these laws on these sites as well.
Oh yeah.
So we are constantly learning of more things that we can't do for risk of losing our income stream.
Yeah, they'll just kick you off the platform with no warning whatsoever, and they don't even tell you when they change the rules of the site too. So
Right.
if you aren't going and reading the terms and conditions on like almost a bi-weekly basis,
Yes.
like
Yeah. Which
you
how many of us do that?
yeah,
Like,
you could all of a sudden learn that you've been like violating the rules, and it doesn't matter if you posted the content 3
Before
years
the
ago
rule
or
or
today.
after the rule.
They'll take you down, and then like the entire site is just run by like algorithms and bots and things like that. There's
Yeah.
actually no customer service whatsoever.
So crazy.
You email them and you're like, I have a problem. They're like, thank you for contacting customer service. Like, we are very concerned about your issue. Please refer to the rules.
Yeah. Right. Well, before we
And
can,
it's always like, her name is Rachel.
Or Coco.
Rachel.
Yeah,
Sure it
Rachel or
is.
Yeah.
something.
Rachel is an acronym for some dumb.
She's actually
thing,
that robot that rolls down my street and delivers.
Fucking Rachel.
Fucking Rachel. I saw Rachel cause an accident the other day.
my God.
I'll bet.
Which is really funny because it was actually a Tesla that then slammed into another car.
Tesla no
Whoa.
Waymo.
Damn. We're going to continue this, but first we're going to start getting into some background. Before we do that, I just want to take 1 second to give our sponsor a moment. We're going to get back into some Popstar. Yeah, Popstar's we're going to have a little moment. We'll be right back. And now we're going to come back. Ready?
And
we're
we're back.
And we're back. We're here with Logan Stevens. And Mr. Stevens, I want to talk a little bit about like
Where are you from, girl?
where are you from? Tell us a little bit about your background. Just
I grew up in like a little tiny like Norman Rockwell country town in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Norman Rockwell. I feel like that is
He's
a reference we don't use as much anymore. Is that like super Americana? Is that
Yeah,
what,
super Americana. He would
Okay.
always have those. It's like little happy white children in small towns with like
With a barn in the back.
a barber who knows everybody's name. And there's like a ice cream parlor and stuff. And we had all of that. Like our barber had one of those like candy cane.
Oh yes,
things.
of course. Yeah.
There was a gazebo in the town center. There was like a farmer's market with the farmers from our town.
Wow.
And there was an ice cream parlor. Yeah, like all that stuff.
You know,
One
just
grocery store.
Very Pleasantville.
Traveling down Main Street.
Yeah, it
Main
was very-
Street.
It was
Sorry.
very that. It was all about football. It was all about, and then like, deer hunting season was like a really big thing. Like kids, like half of my class would disappear for at least a week at a time during deer hunting season.
Did you ever
Whoa.
hunt deer?
Yeah, I did with a bow. I didn't.
Oh, wow.
I didn't
Okay,
really-
that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, there's bow hunting season and like gun hunting season, so it was like a difference in time and stuff too. And
Wow.
I felt much more comfortable with a bow than I did with a gun.
Yeah. Bows are way more badass. I'm not condoning
They're
hunting at
cool.
all, but
No, hunting.
Well, deer need to be
There's no
hunted,
reason.
I
There's no
guess.
reason not to. I mean, there's no
It's
reason
a
to be against
population.
hunting. It's like way better than anything else, and like you're being selective about. First of all, the animal has lived in nature as opposed to some factory farm or Auschwitz as you're going up the 5.
fair.
So it's a far more responsible shource of food. First of all.
Gotcha.
And then also you're eating the whole animal. Like we didn't.
So you
shoot it.
hunted for food,
food. Oh, we
not
would eat
for
it,
like
yeah.
your rec room wall or some crap.
No.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
I was never aware of any, like growing up that everyone was hunting for food and
Gotcha.
everyone had giant freezers in their garage that were specifically for all of the meat that they hunted.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these families, they would like not have to buy beef from the grocery store for like 6 months because the deer that they killed during the hunting season would last them,
Right.
half the year.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, but it was more like a piece of the culture more than it was like a
Like a recreational
survival thing.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It was recreational. It was I'm sure it saved families lots of money, and I'm sure it was also it was just woven into like the culture of where I grew up.
Can I ask if your experience as a child and teenager in a town like that do you recall that like from, a fond perspective?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I had, I didn't really have any friends, but I didn't miss, I mean, I guess if you asked me now, I probably would say that I like missed out on having friends, but I had like a really rich childhood that was kind of spent by myself in the woods, like kind of communing with nature. And I was very like obsessed with all things nature. And I didn't really care about other people. So as long as I had access to,
I'm kidding.
I think that comes across in your content, the nature part, not the not caring about people.
For sure.
I mean,
yes.
like, because you definitely have this natural aesthetic for nature and outdoorsy stuff.
Yeah.
Was that something you thought about? Is it intentional?
It's intentional, but so like the way I like to work is I don't like to feel like I'm working. I like to trick myself into I all of the things that I like, I try to fold it into my work so that none of it feels like I'm actually working.
Right.
Although the administrative stuff, that's fucking working for sure.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, editing, posting, all that.
Editing, posting, caption writing, all of those things. And I just, filling out jot forms.
Yeah.
Like if there is a hell, it's me waiting in line to fill out like a form, like an online form.
Yeah. Yeah. Was getting out of that town like something that you were like excited to do?
Well, yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, of course. There was like I grew up in my bedroom. Like people are like, oh, didn't you watch cartoons and stuff? I watched nature programs as a kid, and like I didn't have like there were probably 20 years worth of National Geographic magazines on one bookshelf in my room, and like my fantasies as a kid were all about being like a National Geographic photographer, like traveling around the world and having this very like Indiana Jones kind of life. So there was like a whole world waiting for me out there, and I couldn't wait to get at it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't this like, there's a lot of narratives and movies and stuff like small town kids like, we're gonna escape this someday. I just knew.
Sure.
That I was just waiting for like my moment to like where the door opened and I could walk out.
And when was that moment, and where did you go?
Yeah, when I graduated from high school and then went off to college.
Which was where?
It's just a small liberal arts school, nice liberal arts school. Yeah.
Like in Wisconsin?
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, all right.
I don't mention specifics. I don't I don't like people like dropping names of schools and things.
Oh, okay.
I feel
That's
like
fine.
It's such a
that's
Can you tell
totally
us, like,
fine.
what state? I think
just a
No, that's
small-
fine.
it's
That's
just
fine.
a small
Sounds like that detail does not matter,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
totally fine.
It doesn't matter. People like to like, it's like a dick measuring contest.
No,
and
that's
some,
not
like,
why I'm asking. The reason I'm asking is because I want to know what it I guess, and you don't have to tell us the location or what school it was. It was more about the experience you gained as you became an adult, like especially because I want to get into also.
Well, I mean, what I could tell you is that like this school was like very, very heavily focused on having a really diverse education, and it was really focused on like international stuff. So like I think it was like 80% of the student body studied abroad at least once during their time.
Okay.
And so and it was one of these schools where it had the highest number of their graduates going on to do PhDs and stuff like that. So it was like a very, very like earthy, academic, engaging, multidisciplinary kind of an atmosphere. And so as part of that, I studied abroad twice while I was in college.
Were those kind of formative times for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. No, it was the beginning of my Indiana Jones fantasy. I worked on an archaeology excavation in northern Chile, and then I studied abroad in India.
Wow.
And then as a result of that, directly after I graduated, I got a fellowship with the U.S. Department of State.
Okay.
That then paid me to go back to India to spend, the remainder of a year learning Hindi.
Wow.
And then, so that precipitated all of this, like, it kicked off that fantasy that I had.
Okay.
And I sort of got to live it for a little while.
I just to bring it back to kind of like the work we do and like the topic of this podcast, I'm curious during this time, this is kind of a 2-part question. We like to talk a lot about just our history as young boys who consumed porn and became sexual adults ourselves that led to our decision to get into porn. Like, were you sexually active when you were in your small town? Or
No.
Okay.
No.
Did you know you were gay?
Not really. There wasn't, I was experiencing same-sex attraction for sure, but I didn't really have like a frame for understanding it. And I feel like at the time, the only representations, there was like one kid in my school who was like eccentric and flamboyant, and it was just sort of like known that he was gay. And then there were like the TV shows at the time, and all of those representations were like a very specific thing. And I got this impression from those things that I was exposed to that like being gay was almost another gender. And it was like a presentation that I didn't identify with. It didn't feel like me. So I was like, well, I'm not that. So
Interesting.
I didn't understand that what I was experiencing was homosexuality.
Did you ever feel like there was a time where, like, a first time where you felt represented in?
When I got to college, and there was this one guy that I was hanging out with, and we would smoke weed together and stuff like that. And then it was like months into us hanging out, he came out to me, and I was like shocked. I was like, I didn't know they made gay people like that.
Because he presented kind of masculine, like, or standard.
And let's not get it twisted. I'm not like stuck on adhering to one presentation or another.
Sure.
But there wasn't anything at the time that felt like me that I could identify with, and so I felt sort of lost, and there wasn't really anything to there wasn't a point to hold on to for me to say like, oh, like my identity makes sense, or like where do I form my identity, because I didn't know. They're just so I was just sort of, I thought maybe I didn't know what was going on.
What was your first like exposure to pornography?
Oh, I would find that on the little dial-up computer on the desktop, and I was like,
at home.
At home. Yeah, and I would find the sites like there was one called like adamandsteve.com or something like that, and then also like old Herb Ritz photos and stuff that would be on some like nude website that would feature, I don't know. So there would be like Herb Ritz photos that I would print out on the printer, and then I would hide them behind my bed.
I did that very same thing.
Yeah, I think we all did. I think we're all kind of in the same age.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Bracket. So our exposure was very similar. And so it sounds like you knew at the time, even at that age, whenever that was, when you were home, that it was gay stuff you were into, not necessarily straight stuff.
Well, but I had girlfriends in high school, and I did have sex in high school with females. But I feel like when you're at that age, anything turns you on. So your body, because it hasn't, because you haven't experienced like all of the options, this is what your body responds to. It responds to touch and attention and stuff like that.
But it's interesting though that even what you're saying, like you probably didn't do the math at the time that like while you were engaging physically with girls, what you were sought out on the computer was very much man-on-man action.
Yeah, no, I think I was choosing not to examine it.
Of course.
Yeah, I was sticking my head in the sand.
Totally.
And consuming what I needed to just to kind of hold things in place, which I think probably describes like all of Utah and Arizona. And
I have a couple fun photos of like you kind of like playing with looks back in the day. I feel like this is really fun. This is Logan in some kind of breastplate situation.
Well, I made these because Faultline would hire would hire me to go-go dance, me and my ex at the time. And we just loved to like fuck around with the idea of go-go dancing.
Yeah.
And boy, the patrons hated these outfits.
Really?
They absolutely hated them. But I made these sort of like nude mesh spandex leotards that had like a separate sort of like breastplate.
Yeah.
That you could then put a water balloon on the inside.
Is that what that is? Are
yeah,
those
so
water
there's
balloons?
water balloons and they're full of water too. And we
a big
just
pair of
used
tits.
like regular balloons too, and then we would use like safety pins to like poke holes in them.
Of course.
Because like somehow for the reason why they're like encased in the nude mesh or whatever, they don't burst. They just like a hole burst, and so then we were like showering.
That's great.
And they had a lot of movement. Like they would bounce.
They
up and
look
down,
very
like,
bouncy.
Yeah, they were really bouncy.
And then, this is a fun. Did you make this?
I can't.
This lobster outfit.
I made bits of it, but I can't really take full credit for it. It's not my design, but I did construct a great deal of it.
I mean, that's great.
Yeah, those were like when I worked with Harwood Lee, and he was making all those things for Mario's parties.
Okay,
so that was
okay.
like a full frontal disco.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Mario Diaz used to throw a party called Full Frontal Disco, where the Go-Go Boys were not necessarily like doing go-go moves. They were more like art installations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would pose.
And they would be like outfits like this, where in this case it's a lobster with a bow tie.
Very Sebastian.
And then what is there's another one I feel like I pulled out. Is there another photo of Logan? Oh, well.
That's
never mind
okay.
then. Like, that's
Get the
enough.
idea.
I mean, so the point I was making, and I was really hoping we could find that other photo just because that was the you that I met, where I feel like you knew kind of how to like blend this like masculine but sort of gender fuck.
Yeah,
like,
I played with gender for a while, probably because gender had been a thing that constrained me and was preventing me from like discovering my identity. So I think we have to play with gender. You know, I've often thought that there's sort of like two, maybe for our generation, there's like two camps of gay men, and it's those who masculinity was forced upon, and those masculinity was denied to, and it's like very much a matter of like, you know, it's the parents being like, you're not man enough, you need to man up, or somebody being like, you're never going to be a man.
Okay, interesting.
You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
so in both of those cases, masculinity gets weaponized against some kid, and it gets weaponized against their identity, and then they grow up to either, you know, I think that sort of like explains the masc and the femme camps that used to be in such conflict, like when we were young gays and stuff.
Yes.
And I think that they end up hating whatever the point of trauma that the other represents, you know?
Do you find that you were in one of those categories?
No, I was sort of, I mean, I've naturally felt masculine. I don't need it to be that way. And I enjoyed playing around with it, especially to, you know, discover the boundaries of my own masculinity and what it looks like and the shape of it and the color of it and all that kind of stuff. But did I feel one way or another about other people who were presenting one way or another? I don't know. I might have
Probably.
I mean,
I don't really remember what my thoughts were about it.
Yeah.
I think, you know, it's been quite a long time. But yeah, you know, it would have been impossible for me not to have had some sort of built-in
some sort of judgment of
some
like,
sort of
some
judgment.
representation.
yeah.
that you
I mean,
saw.
the thing like my.
Well, I was going to say
ahead.
a lot of my like 20s was spent was a lot of effort and thought, and maybe not overtly this effort and thought was placed on it, but deconstructing all of these like preconceived notions that I had about the world. I mean, I guess it continues today. I'm constantly trying to like basically everything we're ever taught is wrong, and so trying to figure out what your truth is in this world where everything is lies is this like ongoing task for your entire life. And the first things that I needed to deconstruct were like identity, gender, sexuality, all of that kind of stuff to be able to define my own space where I lived.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely part of it. And so the masculinity or the sort of like the Marlboro Man style masculinity was in there with other things, and then the, you know, like glitter and sparkles and things like that are just like a highlighter or something, you know. It's like a different.
I love the blending of masc and femme, and I think I always have, and I think that may also come from the fact that I think I was in the former category that you mentioned. I think I was very much a gay kid, and I had like some forces around me that would be like, you need to be a little more masculine to be taken seriously in our community. I found that like kind of playing up my gay side made me sort of edgy. When I was a teenager.
Oh, you grew up in California.
That could be the reason why. I mean, I was in a small community, but I do also, like, my judgment came not in the form of me judging people who were feminine, but rather when people told me that, for example, like, I would have never guessed you were gay. At that time, I would have been like, "Oh, I'm so proud of myself for that."
Oh, I've been such a big boy.
Yeah, like
it's still very much that, and the gay community still very much prizes heterosexual masculinity over homosexual masculinity. It's like,
you think?
Oh God, yeah.
Well,
I mean, just the way. Let's just put it this way.
Okay.
In terms of like the fan sites and stuff like that. Gay men will simp for the straight male creators
for
like
sure.
Nothing else.
I hate it.
And
drives me nuts.
And as a gay male creator for the gay male audience, if I were to try and pull the stuff that they pull, they'd be like, "You're a bitch. You're a stuck-up bitch."
Huh?
You know,
like what
get
kind
away,
of stuff?
Just like the barely offering tiny little snippets of nudity and like the gay for pay guys or whatever can do. They barely do anything, and they make tons of money off of this, and that's because gay men are so desperate to consume this straight male masculinity, because they think that it's the absolute pinnacle, which I find really ridiculous, because to me it's the most fragile that there is. Like the color pink can shatter straight male masculinity.
It's also rejection from someone like that doesn't mean anything to like on them.
Sure.
It's the rejection from someone that is gay that's like, that like, well, he should be into me. He's gay. But the straight guy, of course he's not going to be into me, or of course he's not going to respond to me, or whatever. He's straight.
Yeah, but that's what makes the whole pick-me culture of it all so really obnoxious. I mean, for me, it's
what is pick-me culture? I keep seeing this, but I like don't actually know what it
means.
It's
simpy shit. It's like when like a gay consumer of a gay for pay guy would be like, "Oh my God, amazing!" No matter what, like you know, and if they talk shit about someone hating on them, they'd be like, "Well, fuck them because you're amazing, you're the best." Like, to me, pick me culture is what got Trump the presidency. It's you know what I mean? Okay. It's like the very Republican notion of like, well, I'm gonna get a pat on the back if I like Trump. It's women voting for people that would, you know, subvert their rights, and you know, that's what pick me culture is. But anyway, we're getting a little off topic. The reason why I'm even bringing a lot of this up is because, and you kind of answered a lot of my questions, but I feel like your aesthetic has very much veered toward the masculine, and we see it in a lot of your work. We don't see a lot of the sparkly Logan Stevens we used to know. Do we?
Yeah, that was like
an era.
Yeah, it was an era.
Yeah,
it was fun.
Yeah,
it just doesn't feel like me anymore. Also, it's so much effort to make those things. It's so much work, and also like those are things that sort of like you can't really like weave that into your day to day, especially if you're not going out to clubs and things. And I just like you could not pay me enough money to go into a club or a bar these days.
Sure.
Oh God.
Yeah. There was also an era that I kind of am curious about as well, when you played violin. Like that was one of the first thing.
No, that still exists.
Like, okay, first of all, this is you.
That's me at my brother's wedding.
That is that's you in a suit versus this other picture, which is you in a look.
Sure.
What did you make this look?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That's not a great one.
I mean, it's like I think you look great. I'm sure you have different experience
that was
of
also
it.
like when I had just gotten back from Berlin and I got a haircut in Berlin.
Oh, it looks like a very Berlin haircut.
And I was like, yeah, do something asymmetrical.
When did you become a violinist?
That started like when I was like 6 or 7.
Oh, wow.
Six.
Okay.
Started when I was 6.
Yeah.
So
Did
I've
you?
been playing my whole life.
Was
I still
that
play.
ever something you did as a career, or like something you were paid to do, or?
No,
Okay.
not really. I did initially sort of go to school with that in mind,
Okay.
and very quickly realized it was not going to work out for me, especially when I had to start taking music theory classes and the professor would be like, okay, we're going to have to slow down for Mr. Kupris because he's just not getting it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, boy, music theory did not resonate with me whatsoever.
It's the same with me. Like I'm also a musician, but I've mostly played with my ear. And
Yeah.
we just had Emil Jameson on the program, who is a piano teacher. So every once in a while, to brush up, he'll sit with me and like he'll try to explain theory.
He seems very theory.
He's very theory based, and I kind of asked, I'm like, do you teach all your students this way? Because it's not going to work. Because every time we talk about it, I'm like following him for part of it, and I could just see the words start jumbling into each other. It's so
math.
much math.
It's
not
math.
for me.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, there is a topic that we haven't talked about on this podcast a lot, and I feel like Mr. Stevens would be a great person to discuss this with.
Probably. He's probably a good person to discuss anything.
Well,
with.
like
He's
I said,
very-
multi-hyphenate. Like he's
a
lived
thinker.
many lives. He's
Yeah.
a thinker. He's a creative, and he's killing it at this job. But you have dated a few people and are current.
Yeah. I have
yeah.
a boyfriend.
We talk about this on the podcast a lot because we have learned that a lot of people experience dating within the industry as well as outside of the industry.
Yeah.
And how both have their challenges,
Sure.
but also their pros as well. What has it been like for you as someone who is successful in this industry, who is romantically entangled with someone outside of the industry versus someone who is also working in the industry?
I don't know if that was the. I don't know if that's the question.
Okay, please help me.
I don't know.
Ask
if,
a better one.
Like,
Have you-
I feel like. I think if I were going to talk about like what the whole dating thing is like for doing this sort of work, because it used to be, I felt like one of the first. I think I said this on the Sloppy podcast that like people are always asking this question, like, oh, but doesn't this make dating so hard?
Oh, yes.
And I think
yeah.
I would, like you could have seen my answer on that one, that I get sort of defensive and be like, well, dating is hard no matter what. And also like, why would you make all of your decisions based upon like this prospect of like dating and stuff? How ridiculous. But it does make dating extremely difficult. But I also sort of feel like there's a certain kind of like a filtering device built into this thing.
Exactly.
And if you're doing porn, it's because you wanted to.
Yes.
Like you always wanted to. And whether you admit it or not, like you like it. It's not something that you just casually stumble into and then like, oops, I can't get out. I mean, I suppose for some people maybe, but like not.
I've certainly seen that.
not
Some
in-
people now with the fans. I mean, I don't think with doing like studio work, it's something that you kind of stumble into. There's a few steps along the way that like you can pull yourself out.
I feel like for a lot of people who struggle with it, I think there's an internal conflict that they haven't resolved. And I think that the piece of the conflict that isn't resolving for them is the internalized judgment and shame and like societal friction that they're allowing to occupy too much space in their head, and that clouds their entire experience of doing this work. Whereas I think you could have like a much more joyful experience if you got all of that shit out of your head and just enjoyed it for the piece of the life that gives you the freedom, and like sex is amazing if you can learn how to like enjoy the sex through this process and stuff. As I was saying, it's like really important too.
Yeah.
But getting back to the topic, I feel like I had a significant amount of loneliness from from doing this work and sort of the way in which it would put me at odds with like the general community and the dating pool and stuff like that. And, you know, like when you do this work, like everybody wants to fuck you, but nobody really takes you seriously as like a person.
Sure.
Even if they have some sort of a concept of you being like a well-rounded person or an interesting person, this, that, or the other thing, they just don't take you seriously. It's not like, you know, I think in the back of their mind, they're like, oh, am I going to introduce this person to mom? Like, how am I going to explain this? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, just fucking like, don't worry about what mom thinks. You know, like, are you going to live your whole life to like, meet the expectations of just come on.
Well, I mean, it's all really what shame is. You know, I had a couple family members kind of be like, well, how do I explain this to people? And to me, I was always like, well, listen, if you treat it like something that you're ashamed of, people will shame you for it.
Yeah, you frame the narrative by how you frame the narrative.
Exactly, yeah.
You set the parameters for like what, you know, and like I've also said, like, you can't really, if you're not ashamed of something, you take the fun out of the judgment.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not very
That's
fun
right.
to
yeah,
judge someone
totally
for something that they own.
That they're not. That they're not ashamed of. Yeah, I guess the context for why we like talking about this is because there has been multiple experiences that people have had. For example, dating someone who is more successful than you, dating someone who has never been in the industry and has judgment about it, but really is curious about getting into it themselves.
Right.
Or in like a case we've talked about with you, dating someone who's completely out of the industry and says they're okay with it, but eventually kind of be like, well, you know, here I am waiting to hang out with you, but you've spent the last week fucking all these people on camera, or you know, so like you, if you don't mind my saying your current situation, you're with someone who was not in the industry.
Yeah, not really, no.
But joined it.
But joined in
once spending time with you.
Yes.
So what's that been like for you guys?
Well,
like,
this has been like almost universally a positive experience for both of us.
how nice.
Yeah, actually, like his entry into it has sort of like revitalized my interest in it. Like I would say, like if you asked me a year ago, I was really beginning to try and like plot my exit because I was beginning to feel like things were stagnating a little bit. I wasn't like feeling a lot of inspiration and stuff. But his excitement, I get to sort of like live vicariously through his excitement, and that sort of like revitalizes my work and all that kind of stuff. And also just like his outside perspective on it, you know, because he came into this from being like a well-known reality TV producer with some very, very successful shows. And he chose to set fire to all of that in order to chase this. And it was because he saw how my life was and the amount of freedom that I had and, you know, like what I've been able to do with it financially and all that kind of stuff. And was like, well, what the hell am I like doing this shit for?
Right.
You know? And the television industry is brutal, no matter how glamorous it can be from like, you know, yeah, so it's been great, and I think that this is mostly because there isn't any shame here. The communication that we have is unlike anything I've ever experienced before. It's like the most clear and open, and like I don't think I've ever been this honest in my life. Like, I don't think it's even like a situation where I'm examining things and experiences that I haven't really had to, because I haven't had to like reflect to another person before. But yeah, it's sort of interesting because I find myself like describing in minute detail emotional experiences that I'm having that I would have completely ignored before.
Yeah. Wow. That's so
great.
Fucking cool.
Yeah, I've never.
And he's just such a nice dude.
Yeah,
like,
he's really, really fantastic.
Yeah. He kind of, I could see him like treating this industry with almost like this puppy dog energy that he has, like where he's just very, he gets excited. And
I mean, it still has its like moments of, you know, leaving you feeling inadequate. You have to wrestle with like comparison anxiety and stuff like that.
Do you feel that sometimes?
Oh God, yeah. Are you kidding me?
I would never guess
About
that from what I know of you.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I present a pretty stoic front or whatever, but there are like, you know, I struggle with it too.
Okay.
Yeah, there's absolutely, you know, If you can't get the attention of another creator that you'd really like to work with or something, then you're like, something must be wrong with me. Or like,
totally.
My body's changed in the last year. That's probably the explanation for all that I'm experiencing now. Or like, the subscribers are down. It's probably something wrong with me.
Right.
Like, it's so easy to blame yourself first and foremost for anything that's going on. And, you're sort of in this by yourself. And so there's not a lot of like external information to explain why something is happening, this, that, or the other thing. You pretty much only have yourself to reflect on. So it can be, if you don't have a really like strong, solid sense of yourself, those voices get really loud. Oh boy, do they
for
get
sure.
loud.
Yep.
Yeah. And that can be, I think that probably is one of the things that is maybe the most damaging about this entire thing is the voice that you put on yourself.
Yes.
And I've seen that tear people apart.
We talk about this a lot.
Self-judgment.
I've seen it bring grown-ass men down.
Yeah,
sure.
I'm friends with like some of the most beautiful men on the planet, and they're the ones that are like constantly... They're like, oh my God, my body's terrible, this, that. Or like some of them won't leave the house for weeks if they don't think that they look their best.
Yeah.
Or it's insane. And like from anybody else's perspective, they'd be like, these are the most beautiful men on the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, you've done something really amazing with your Logan Stevens comeback. Is there anything in the near future that you're very excited about?
I don't know. Well, I mean, sure. I may or may not. I think I'm like 99% sure on this. I think I'm selling my house and I think we're leaving the country.
Wow.
I know.
Exciting.
I just bought that damn thing.
Yeah. But as you've discussed with me before, like home ownership in this state is like not an easy thing to do.
Okay, but also mortgages are such a fucking scam.
Yeah.
It's such a scam.
Really?
Like if I ride this entire mortgage out, I will pay for that house 3 times. 2 of it goes to the bank and 1 goes to the principal.
Yeah. Yes. I've seen that before.
And that's insane. And so I'm like, I did all of the things where I built the financial base and I got the perfect credit score and I got the mortgage and all that kind of stuff. And then realized that all of it is this entire system designed to create this like cyclical like need situation.
Mm-hmm.
And if I pick everything apart and see like what I'm actually getting out of this versus what I'm spending on it, it's like insane. And my arm is all the way up the ass of capitalism now.
Yeah.
And then that ties me to the fate of the state. And like fascism was not in my plans for the future. So what do we do now?
Right.
Like and even if things do pan out and like let's say we replace Trump with something else, the alternative was what put us in this situation in the first place by being so fucking useless that they don't do anything.
Yeah.
That they sold us out to like all these corporations and stuff anyhow. So like why am I here?
Right.
Why am I here? And I can't do anything about it.
Right. Well, you can sell your house and get out.
I think that feels like my only option.
Let me know how it goes.
I know. I'm learning how to get excited about this idea because I'm a little bit heartbroken at the moment. But,
I'm sorry. On that note, we got to wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope this was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We love talking to you, and best of luck. Find Logan Stevens, you guys. You won't be disappointed.
Oh, yeah, please do.
I sure wasn't. Anyway, that's it for me. How about you, Mr. Connor?
I'm Cole Connor.
I'm Adam Ramzi. This has been Sorry for Asking.
Goodbye.
Bye.
This has been Sorry for Asking. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, stay sexy.